A murmur ran through the tavern, stifling the laughter and singing. The minstrel, with a mischievous wink in his eye, announced, "Silence, lords and ladies. It is the turn of a new tale, one that tells of a rough man with calloused hands and unparalleled cunning. A man who masters the arts of deception, capable of turning flour into gold and outwitting the most cunning. Prepare to meet the miller himself." The miller, with his hoarse voice and booming laughter, staggered to his feet, ready to tell his story. The host, with an indulgent smile, made way for him, though not before warning the company. "Listen, friends, this man is drunk as a skunk. If his words offend you, remember that beer is to blame." The miller, with a mocking smile and without any care for politeness, replied, "By the bones of Christ, if you are going to be scandalized, cover your ears. But I promise you that my tale is juicier than a bunch of grapes in September." The host, amid laughter and nods, gave him his turn. "Speak, miller, but don't let it be said later that we didn't warn the audience." And so, with everyone's attention captured, the miller began his tale, one that promised to be as cheeky and amusing as himself. In the city of Oxford, there was an elderly and wealthy carpenter named John, who, fearful of gallant young men and jealous of his honor, had taken for his wife a young woman of 18, Alisoun. Alisoun's beauty was such as to arouse the admiration of all in the city, and her husband, well aware of this, kept her under lock and key and constant surveillance. One day, while the carpenter was away, Nicholas, the student who rented a room in their house, approached Alisoun with a mischievous smile and said, "Sweet Alisoun, don't you see how you consume me with your beauty? No study nor star can compare with the brightness of your eyes." Alisoun, coquettish and conscious of her charm, replied with a laugh, "Oh, Nicholas, don't you know that I am a married woman? But who am I to deny a little consolation to a heart so afflicted?" And so, amidst laughter and complicit glances, began the game of seduction that would lead the old carpenter to be deceived in this story of cunning and desire. At the carpenter's house, the student Nicholas had devised a plan to be alone with Alisoun. One morning, when the carpenter John had gone out, Nicholas approached Alisoun with a mischievous look and whispered, "Alisoun, my sweet friend, what would you say if I confessed to you that my heart burns for you? I cannot think of the stars while your light shines brighter than any star in my sky." Alisoun replied, "Oh, Nicholas, you are a rogue, but don't you know that I am a married woman? Although a little fun never hurt anyone, did it?" With a knowing wink, the two sealed their secret pact of love. Nicholas, with his knowledge of astrology and his wit, began to plot a deception that would allow them to enjoy their love without being discovered. Nicholas, the cunning student, had devised a master plan to spend the night with Alisoun without being discovered by the carpenter. One evening, when John the carpenter returned home, Nicholas accosted him with a grave and worried expression. "Master," said Nicholas, "I have watched the heavens and have seen signs of an impending catastrophe. A flood like Noah's is coming, and we must take steps to save ourselves." The carpenter, pale and frightened, asked, "What should we do, Nicholas? How can we escape such a fate?" Nicholas answered, "We must hang 3 jars from the ceiling and wait in them until the waters rise. Then, like Noah in his ark, we will float to safety." The carpenter, gullible and fearful, followed Nicholas's instructions to the letter. That night he hung up the jars and climbed into one of them, falling fast asleep. Nicholas and Alisoun, taking advantage of the situation, spent the night together, laughing at the poor deceived carpenter. Night had fallen, and Nicholas and Alisoun were enjoying their forbidden love when Absalom, the sacristan who was burning with love for Alisoun, approached the window of the room where the lovers were meeting. With a honeyed voice and lute in hand, Absalom sang a serenade for Alisoun, hoping to win his heart. "Oh, sweet Alisoun," whispered Absalom, "may I have from your lips a kiss, and thus seal my love for you?" Alisoun, mocking and wanting to play a trick, replied, "A kiss you shall have, but you must promise it will be the last, and then you will leave." Absalom, excited and blinded by love, agreed. But instead of Alisoun's lips, it was his ass that he found in the dark, and the poor sexton kissed it without knowing it. Realizing the joke, Absalom was left humiliated, vowing revenge. After the mockery he had suffered, Absalom, the sexton, was burning with desire for revenge. He plucked up his courage and, with a red-hot rake in hand, returned to Alisoun's window. With a firm voice, he called out to the young woman, "Alisoun, my flower, my sweet cinnamon, will you grant me another kiss? This time, it will be different." Alisoun and Nicholas, barely containing their laughter, decided to continue their cruel game. Nicholas approached the window, and instead of Alisoun, peeked out his ass. Absalom, believing he would finally get his longed-for kiss, applied the red-hot rake with all his might. Nicholas's cry of pain echoed in the night, awakening the carpenter who, in his confusion, thought the floodwaters had come. In a desperate act, he cut the rope that held his jar, falling with a crash and breaking his arm. The noise and screams attracted the neighbors, who found the carpenter on the floor, talking nonsense about a flood. Amid laughter and murmurs, the story of the hoax spread throughout the town, and the poor carpenter became a laughingstock. Dawn came to Oxford, and with it, the news of the hoax spread like sunlight through the streets. The carpenter, a victim of his credulity and Nicholas's wit, became the butt of all mockery. People murmured and laughed as they passed by his house, and he, confused and ashamed, did not know where to hide. Alisoun, for his part, feigned innocence, and Nicholas, though his backside was burned, gloated in his cunning. Absalom, still humiliated, decided that he would never again court such a deceitful woman. The miller, concluding his tale, laughed out loud and looked at his fellow travelers, hoping to see in their faces the amusement he felt. With a satisfied smile, he said, "And so, friends, let us learn that we must not be so gullible or jealous. But if you are, at least make sure you don't get cheated under your roof." Laughter and comments were not long in coming at the end of the miller's story. Some applauded his wit, others were shocked by his impudence. But all agreed on one thing: the miller's story had been memorable. As the miller drained his last mug of beer, a serious-looking man with a calculating gaze rose from his seat. He was the manager, a pragmatic and efficient man known for his sharp mind and sharp tongue. "I listened with great interest to the miller's story," said the steward. "No doubt, cunning and intelligence are valuable tools in life. But as you well know, greed and ambition can cloud the judgment of even the most astute." He adjusted his cloak over his shoulders, and with a sarcastic tone in his voice, he added, "Now, if you will allow me, I will tell you a slightly darker story, a story about greed, betrayal, and the consequences of our actions. What will the next story be?" This video was created for Mythology. See you on the next adventure.